He said, the people which sat in darkness saw great light, and to them which sat in the region and the shadow of death, light is sprang. What does that tell you? That the kind of darkness that we speak about in this region is not the darkness of sickness and diseases. Darkness has layers. Darkness has degrees. But in this kind of context where scripture speaks that they saw light. And the reason why they saw this light, it was because a man journeyed through that region. And so the degree of that light that these people saw was a degree of light that came to change their living, their lifestyle. So that in Jesus' days, because Jesus came around into a territory, if that territory was saddled or neck deep in prostitution, the people suddenly saw Jesus and prostitution became a thing of the past. There was no word that was said to them. The Bible said they saw. Just by looking onto a man and seeing how he lived his own life. So one of the things that God began to infiltrate into my heart recently is that the way to preserve the inheritance of the things that God has delivered unto us from last year through this year, which will be our experience, is that we must, in all sense of responsibility, walk in our characters. This was an issue that the Lord began to put in my heart. The issue of character. Because the first thing that Jesus came to establish, the first thing that Jesus ever showed his disciples was that he was a man who was flawless in character. And so when he called the disciples, the first thing he did was to call them to be with him. Meanwhile, if we check in today's Christianity, the reason why many of us are looking for power is because we want to go out to demonstrate. And we don't have such that have been with Jesus, that Jesus can entrust such ability with. I'm saying this to us just in a little form of a charge so that we don't waste the investment of God in 2025. There are so much that God has said he's going to do. And he will do it through as many that are seated in this place. Provided you will take out time to begin to walk on. You can be seeking the Lord and you are seeking him in something that the Lord is not even interested in giving to you. My soul thirsted for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? When shall I come? In as much as I say my soul is seeking after God, he said, when shall I come and appear before God? Because it is in the appearance of God that men are made. It is when God appears to men that the deficiency of their character is exposed. I can show you scriptures for that. Isaiah chapter 6 from verse 1. He said, in the year that King Uzziah died, he said, I, Isaiah, that was when I also saw the Lord sitting on his throne, high and lifted up, and his strength filled the temple. Verse 2. He said, above it stood the seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With twine he did cover his face, and with twine he covered his feet, and with twine he did fly. Verse 3. He said, and one cried unto another and said, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of what? His glory. And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, woe is who? Did he say woe is Israel? He said, then said I, woe is me, for I am on what? Because I do what? I'm a man of an unclean lips. So it is when God, a man seeks God to that dimension where God begins to appear. That is when you truly know the fallen state of a man. You know, as you are like this now, you can be very holy, sanctimonious, appeared pious before men, but you can never tell what are those hidden things inside you. As a matter of fact, I've heard scholars talk about Isaiah, and they've said from verse 5, from chapter 5, it looks as though Isaiah felt he has concluded his assignment. It looks as though he has done everything that he needed to do. But until he had this experience, he never knew that there were things that have kept him in a state of limitation to thinking that chapter 5 was the best point for him to get to. We cannot respond to the bidding and to the call of God when we have deficiency in character. See, you know, I may be saying it very small, In part of the things that God showed me, 31st, early hours of the morning, I saw him use the brother's face, and he appeared in my room. And then he called me. It was as if he wanted to take me through a journey. While he began to speak to me, he said something very fair. He said, in a bid not to offend men, you have reduced in the approach of my word. You have stepped down. You know, there are things we cannot say to some of us that are seated here. If we say them to you, the next thing you will look at Pastor Dan as a small boy, and then you have another option. The option that might just be that you start up, Jesus never failed ministry. Yes, because everybody speaks in tongues. And everybody in one way or the other have heard the mic, and you have seen people manifested on the floor, thinking that that is all there is. Meanwhile, that could just be the beginning of an end of a journey. So Isaiah came and said, when I saw the Lord, the first thing that I recognized, apart from the glory that filled the temple. You know, you can be praying for glory, and we don't know that what we are simply doing is that we are asking God to expose our flaws. We are simply asking him to expose our nakedness. But it's just a pity that sometimes when the Lord comes like that, many of us are reluctant to accept who we are. We are just reluctant. So there are some things we are going to be saying this year. I know God has said he will bring men. But until I get those men whose heart are stable, men who are kingdom orientated, men who are ready to go extra mile, who believe in whether we die or we live. You know, recently I began to study Esther. When she admitted her faith to go see the king, do you know that every step she took was a step of, if I perish, I perish. And the reason for that is because she has come to accept that the reason why she was made a king, a queen, is not for just the fame. It's not for the adornment that came with it. It's not for the comfort that actually came with it. It's because she was there to save a generation from dying. I've been saying this thing for a long time. When you hear people say, this is how I am, fear those people and run away from them. Fear them and run. He said, I can't beg because of you. I can't change my principle because of you. It's your principle, it's not God's principle. And if your principle is not in alignment with God's principle, sorry, that principle is carved from hell.